Welcome to Fire Your Doctor with your host, Dr. Danielle Lockwood,
And your other host, guest, Richard Lockwood,
or resident guest.
resident guest.
Resident guest.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
If it's my show, then I have to write the notes. I don't want to write the notes.
The truth comes out, right? Well, what are we talking about? We're in part 2 of our series, Reclaiming the Bedroom. We're going to talk today about men's testosterone and the truth about desire, male desire. This is why we have to have you as a resident
You don't
person.
have to, you get to.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
get to. No, what do you want to know?
Okay, well, in the last episode, we talked about what's really sabotaging the sex life, exhaustion, distractions, connection. We want to zoom in on men now. So, because culturally, men are told they should always be ready. If not, something must be wrong. The solution, is it a pill? Is it a little blue pill? Or is low desire other things that are going on? So, it's not just about testosterone, it's about vitality. So, that's kind of a flyover.
Gosh, that chirping sound's going to be annoying.
Is it going to just keep going?
Probably.
Okay, good.
Hey, no, let's back up. Let's talk about onus of control. If we're talking about like masculine and masculinity, like these types of things, there's kind of this thing where we want power, but we don't want authority. We, as human beings, part of the human condition is we want to have control, but we don't really want to have like the responsibility. And it's kind of like, I want to feel safe and protected. I don't want to feel at risk. So I want to drive the car. But it's like, I also don't want to be my fault if I crash the car. Right. And so there's this kind of way. Remember when I was talking yesterday about getting a man into hyper responsibility? That if a wife just takes more of a submissive role and just says, like, well, honey, I'm personally, maybe I'm not sure about this, but if you're really certain about it, then you know what? Like, I support you. Let's go for it. But, you're it's your responsibility. This choice is your call. And then that puts the man in more of a, okay, well, I guess I'm driving. If I wreck the car, it's my fault. It is 1,000% my fault. I can't blame it on my wife. I can't blame it on anything. Anyway, there's also this way that in these types of things, when you're just like desire and kind of like the way your life is going, where men kind of get into this pattern where it's like, everything's my responsibility, but I'm not driving. You know what I mean? And so there's this kind of mismatch where in culture and kind of culturally, you can end up with all the responsibility, like you're footing all the bill, but you're not making any of the decisions. You know what I mean? And the first thing that you got to do if you're a man and your desire is cooked and you're not feeling it is figure out where that is. And it's just like, no, this is my fault. It is my fault. But by taking that, like, you know what, this is 1,000% my fault. I'm out of shape. I'm this, I'm that. My T is low. Like things aren't working like they used to. It's my fault. It's my responsibility to fix it. More importantly, it's my responsibility. But with that, you're kind of reclaiming your onus of control. It's just like, I'm not some kind of like limp victim of circumstance and the economy sucks and this sucks. And my wife's mean to me and my kids are terrible. And all my money's getting taken for my kids' college and, this kind of whatever your victim story is, getting out of that and into a position where it's like, yeah, this is my responsibility and I'm claiming it as 100% my responsibility. Where was I? Okay. Yeah. So personal responsibility, like once you start reclaiming control of your life and get out of kind of like victim situations as a grown man, then you can also start to claim responsibility for your own desire. Like, and I guess a way to do that would be like, reframing some things in your relationship, like there can be kind of this victim-y way that a man might justify using pornography because his wife has sexually rejected him and their love life's kind of in the toilet and he hasn't been intimate with his wife in like months, sometimes multiple years. You know what I mean? And that's a pretty ugly place to be as a man. It's like this deep sense of rejection where you're like, and I'm not saying it's all fair and there's like a woman's side to it. I understand that. But from a man's perspective, it kind of feels like I'm this workhorse that's just working like a dog every single day. And, my kids make fun of me. My wife is like, ha ha ha, dad bod, that's funny. You know what I mean? And I went from being maybe this sexually desirable man that maybe had like multiple women that were attracted to him and like had this career ahead of him and was making really good money and his life was going places. And now it's kind of like you're like a workhorse and between your wife and your kids, they kind of spend all your money. You're pouring yourself out and you're spending your life on this. Yeah, you might be like kind of out of shape and burned out because you're tired. You're working overtime. You're making compromises in your personal health to provide a lifestyle for a family. And in return, you get sexually rejected and mocked.
We haven't even gotten into the science part of it yet.
So,
Yeah.
so that's kind of the internal. Now, out of that, you can start to get like a man like resenting his wife, resenting his kids. Maybe he starts justifying, kind of like sidelining money from the family. Maybe he starts gambling. Maybe he starts using pornography, and it's just like, my wife doesn't want me, so why shouldn't I, meet my needs elsewhere, kind of thing. He might even justify an affair, and so you get into this really ugly place. Now, I'm not justifying all of that, and it's like I'm sure there's the woman side of it. It's just like, well, hey, you don't even care about me unless you want to get laid, and otherwise you're just kind of like watching sports and drinking. When was the last time that you even took a personal interest in the children? Like, you're just kind of working and doing your thing, and you don't even care about us.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there's like a woman side to it, but there's kind of that ugly conversation that that man needs to have with his wife, that just like, I feel ashamed and I feel rejected, that you don't want me anymore, and then she's probably going to come back with something. Well, you only want sex, and you come home angry, and you smell like alcohol, and where have you been, and who's texting you? So this could get to be a really uncomfortable conversation, but at some point in a marriage, you need to have that conversation before that turns into more than just a text.
Yeah. And testosterone is not just a hormone or aggression or muscle. It influences a lot of things. It
Yeah.
influences drive, it influences confidence, motivation, risk taking, mood stability, muscle mass,
Yeah.
red blood cell production, motivation. We talked about libido, right?
There's a lot of things in life, though, that to raise testosterone and things like that, that have to do with just doing and experiencing like masculine things.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. Here's a couple symptoms of low testosterone. So if you or your husband or somebody you know is going through this, they might explain things like fatigue, difficulty reducing their belly fat, irritability, brain fog, low confidence, and a decrease in a spontaneous desire.
Mood swings.
Yeah, mood swings.
It's kind of a lack of passion for life.
Yeah. Average testosterone in men has dropped significantly over the decades.
Yes.
We're going to talk about some of the contributors. Poor sleep is a huge one.
Mhm.
Chronic stress, we talk
Yeah.
about.
Chronic stress is the double whammy, because it's going to increase your belly fat while also lowering your T.
Yes. Ultra processed foods, like
Yeah.
your very shelf stable
Anything that
foods.
you would eat at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Exactly. Endocrine disrupting chemicals. So those would be
Yeah.
like plastics, besides
Body sprays.
body axe,
Yeah.
spray, and
You don't want the axe down there.
Yeah. And there can part of endocrine disrupting chemicals that basically we've talked about in
Marijuana.
other episodes. Yeah,
A lot of the recreational drugs will start doing that too.
I'll talk about, give me 1 second, but
Sorry.
the chemicals will actually mimic testosterone type or estrogen type compounds.
Yeah.
And so they will block your natural ability to process those hormones. So that's there. Just being sedentary, right? One of the things to boost testosterone in both men and women, we talked about weightlifting and putting muscle on the body.
Particularly for men, competition with other men will do wonders for your testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
Like just some kind of, maybe it's playing basketball, maybe it's, jujitsu, like martial arts are great. There's a lot of injuries, going and lifting weights, going for a run, just physical activity that other men are involved will get you that community. And it'll also get you connected to where men really want to like measure themselves and kind of like sharpen themselves with other men. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, even if you're the slowest guy in your running group, as you kind of see that, you're just like, I was afraid of that. I was afraid of that. But sooner or later, if you actually like stick with it, you won't be the slowest. And you know what? Your confidence at your progress and the way you fit in with that team is actually going to like greatly improve all of those things, as far as like libido, confidence, and then by extension, testosterone.
Absolutely.
So just anything kind of competitive, and particularly things that involve physical movement and competition.
Yes. I want to porn-induced dopamine dysregulation. So we talked about that dopamine cycle of trying to get the hit off something. We talked about pornography, and we also talked about lifestyle pornography last time in women, which we'll get into more.
I'm going to hold your feet to the fire on that. Not you personally, but like, here's the thing is like, if you're in kind of like the church community, and it's kind of like hey, you know what, we're with at church, we're talking about current events. You're going to hear sometime in your church career a sermon about pornography. What you're going to hear a lot less about as you're looking at an audience full of a lot of makeup, a lot of lip injection, a lot of dresses that are just an inch too short, but not enough to really get in trouble. And you're going to start seeing a lot of this lifestyle pornography.
Alcohol. This is all alcohol, but I'll make a special shout out to beer. Beer contains a high level of an estrogenic herb called hops, and it is an estrogen mimicker. And that is why men will get beer bellies that look like
Yeah.
pregnant women. So
Yeah.
if you want pregnant women beer bellies,
For best results, combined with pot.
yes, combine that with pot.
Strictly speaking, like medically, marijuana does have estrogen like processes like metabolically. And so you will see that kind of like adipose around your pectorals and
Mhm.
kind of like that midriff kind of body pattern that's kind of starts to be kind of a pear shape.
Yep. And then that goes with obesity, right?
Actually, it's worth a sidebar. Correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these kind of estrogen like compounds will actually almost produce like an inverse effect in women. Have you heard that? That like can kind of turn into almost compounds that turn women like more kind of like more aggressive, more dominant, and men more passive and kind of like softer.
I haven't heard that piece. I've heard
I've
the
heard that.
male piece,
You
but
will see it as kind of a pattern anecdotally as well. It just kind of
interesting.
stuck with me.
So,
All right.
just for more detail about some of those things, refer to episode 22 is on toxins.
Sure.
Episode 14 is called Overfed But Hungry. So, it talks about the obesity crisis and ultra processed foods and all that. And then episode 16 is all about adrenal fatigue and
Yeah.
cellular fatigue and all
Yeah.
of that. So, this is a systems issue. So these are causes that cause that low testosterone and
They're causes and effects.
effects.
All of these things are a feedback loop.
Yep.
It's like my cortisol's up, I'm gaining weight, I'm kind of depressed, my T's maybe a little bit lower, I'm kind of got that adrenal going. I don't really feel like working out, so I don't go play basketball with the guys or whatever it is. And then I know that I'm not going to do very well because I'm kind of tired. And so I don't go. And it kind of makes this feedback loop. And next thing you know, you've gained like 10 pounds, 20, 50, 75, 80 pounds. And as you kind of do that, like deep down, there's also this sense of like kind of just knowing that you kind of chickened out a little bit.
Yeah.
And all of those things kind of create this snowball where you just kind of let yourself go.
So we're going to talk about that cortisol versus testosterone, go a little bit deeper on that.
Tell me about it.
Chronic stress is
I don't
going to
have any
bring
of that.
us high cortisol, right?
Yeah.
Cortisol, again, is the longer term way that our body deals with those fight or flight hormones, adrenaline,
Yeah.
right?
Adrenaline spike, and then cortisol
So
comes in later
takes
over
over.
a longer period to clean up.
High cortisol will suppress testosterone production. The other
That's
thing
true.
that we know that cortisol does, especially from the Overfed But Hungry episode, which was number 14, we talked about how high cortisol will also create high insulin, which will make it difficult for the body to release fat.
Yeah. So you're going to gain weight, you're going to have less energy, a little bit kind of puffy and swollen, or testosterone. That sounds.
Yes. So if a man is feeling financial pressure, emotional criticism, performance anxiety, and constant stress, his body deprioritizes reproduction.
Actually, what's funny about that, you were talking about emotional vulnerability on the last episode and things like that. And like women have to like feel like really emotionally safe. And I was like, men don't experience that in the same way. There is a way that men do experience that. And that is like, there's this way that self-consciousness really kills the ability to sexually perform. Like if you're thinking about, is it going to work? Is it going to work? Oh no. What if it's not? You've just, it's not going to work.
You're done.
Yeah, the best thing is to just forget about it. And then also, I think there's this process of just kind of like managing arousal states. I mean, I guess we're going
Well,
there.
we're going to go in here
Yeah.
and talk about this particular.
Yeah, there's a whole like lots of like states with that. So where as a man you need to feel safe and like where you need that emotional safety is around that kind of like performance. Because it's like as a man I can go like I can be ready like very quickly. A lot of times like my wife wouldn't really be on that same page. And so then I'll kind of be like, biologically my body's like, false alarm, guys, let's pack it up. And then all of a sudden she's like, yeah. And I'm like, we gotta restart this.
Yeah.
We gotta start over. I'm gonna go get a drink of water, take a break, and like we gotta start over. Like biologically, I was just like, this is happening. This is happening. And then finally it was just like, I mean, no work for me here. I'm clocking out. And so you've got to kind of have like a little bit of like mercy for yourself as far as that goes. If
Mhm.
you being biologically healthy, it's just like, don't worry, it'll come back. Like,
Yeah.
so have a little bit of grace for yourself and like, talk to your wife about it and she will too.
So, this next topic, pornography and the dopamine rewiring, goes back to what we talked about in the first episode, which is that dopamine loves to spike. And dopamine is that pleasure hormone, right?
Hmm.
And it keeps us coming back to seek that pleasure. Dopamine will actually spike from novelty, from new things happening. Then the brain adapts, then real life intimacy becomes less stimulating.
Right.
And we're seeing this, unfortunately, with our young boys,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
they're getting into the internet at a very young age. And everybody thinks that their kids' settings are good on their internet and their phone, and they're being
They already have
responsible,
mom and dad's password
but they've
and blah,
already
blah, blah.
figured it out.
Yeah. And the
I know this
bypass.
because I've talked to these teenagers,
Yeah.
as like the cool aunt doctor, and they tell me things.
What's really going on,
And
guys?
what's really going on. And the pornography thing is very big, very,
Yeah.
very big.
Yeah.
And so we're having young men with already low testosterone because they're almost like spending that. So what happens is, that constant stimulation from pornography use and masturbation to go with that, delayed arousal issues, lower satisfaction, and then they start becoming emotionally detached because it's hard to get rejected by a girl in real life. It's hard to, kick up the nerve inside you to go ask her out for a coffee or, do
When
something
something
like
else
that
is just like easier.
when something
I
else
guess
can.
let's talk about drugs. When we talk about like dopamine, you're talking about more like your kind of like Wolf of Wall Street kind of, I'm thinking of stockbrokers in like the
Mhm,
80s. And there would be kind of like stimulants and things. You think of
mhm,
like cocaine
mhm,
or something. And what's interesting about that is that's going to be mimicking that dopamine rush that you would get from achieving perhaps a goal that had taken you months or like years of striving towards.
mhm.
It's like, well, I finally like won this race. I finally like got this job. I finally got my degree after years of struggle. And it's just like, yes, I'm the world champion at pickleball. I don't know what, but just anything that you really, really work for and that you get, you're going to get that huge dopamine hit. But the problem is with like a street drug like that is that, you can just get that same emotional and chemical response from just like, okay, yeah, here's a couple $100, let's go. And just from the comfort of your own home. And what's even scarier about pornography is that you're getting that rush very often for free. And it's like not even like, generally illegal. And if it was, they wouldn't tell you that. Like they wouldn't disclose that. It might be illegal and you don't know it, which is terrifying. But beyond that, I think that there's this way to either make something like pornography completely a moral issue or completely like a medical issue. Like we've talked a bit here about, some of the moral consequences, but also medically, what it's doing to your dopamine and, what it's doing to your dopamine and, all that kind of stuff. And like, hey, let's dopamine reset. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I don't know. I've never used one of those kind of programs that they have. If you're a man between, say, 20 and 40, you're probably going to get ads for like, do you need help quitting the P word? And like whatever, even if you don't use it, they're just kind of assuming. And a lot of those are approaching it for like behavior and medical and like things like
Mhm.
that. Or even from like more of a milk toast, like Christian perspective, where it's like, hey, let's just pray. And I think that's sometimes not everything, is that what starts as kind of like a habit can kind of turn into, in some cases, it can quickly turn into more than a habit and more than something that's just kind of like biology that's getting hijacked. And it's like, and then it's not that it's not biology being hijacked, but anybody that's maybe quit like a serious drug, at some point they might start using language like, you know what, I'm 10 years sober and whatever that substance was turned into a demon. And we start to get a little bit of that language when people get into a point where it's like, I want to quit. I try to quit. I'm doing everything I can to quit. If there was a button that I could quit and just like burn this off the planet and never do it again, I'd press it in a heartbeat. But despite what I want, I find myself an hour later, a day later, minutes later, just like doing everything I can to unblock my blockers.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's
It's a spiritual
starting to sound like
battle.
a demon in that kind of language of like, what was that movie? There's like Requiem for a Dream and Train Spotting
Yeah.
and some of those kind of movies where you just see people just dragged through the like the depths of drug addiction, where it's just like any reasonable person would just like, how do I quit?
Yeah.
And you can kind of see some of that when you look at the lives that are destroyed with pornography.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Mm.
there is a way out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a way out.
yeah. It's Jesus.
Sorry to tell you, it's Jesus.
Yeah, I know, I
Yeah.
know. I mean, it's not to say that, you know what, like, some of these things for like, if it's a lesser issue and it's just kind of biology and kind of like habit and retraining and all that stuff works for you, like, great. But like, ultimately, if you get to that point where you're just like, I'm doing all of the things and I'm kind of biohacking my biology and like there's something in me, it's just like at that point, it's, just tell Jesus the truth, tell somebody that you know, love, and trust the truth, and like just get it out of you.
Yeah.
Just say like, "I'm sorry I invited this thing in, get it out in Jesus' name."
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And there's a lot of things like that. I think addiction kind of falls in that category too, for sure.
All addiction, yeah.
Alcohol addiction. Blood sugar. Well, we're going to reiterate what we just said about the different hormones that are located within herbs and, alcohol. Fat tissue converts testosterone to estrogen.
Yeah,
That's called aromatization. The more visceral fat you have, which is the fat that's contained like a blanket over the belly,
yeah,
okay, that will lower testosterone and eventually that will lower your drive.
oh, yeah,
Okay. If you add in insulin resistance, that's going to lower your sex hormone binding globulin. It's on, if you do a blood test, it's SHBG. Blood sugar stability equals hormonal stability. And so, what are some things we would recommend? And we talked about this again deeper in episode 14. What would we recommend for this type of process? It's a metabolic condition.
Well, I mean, that's gonna be insulin resistance. I mean, a lot of the things, it's like, the market is ready to take your money and get you on extreme plans, so be aware of that. You see some of these things marketed to men. A couple of years ago, there was, like, the Liver King, where he's just like, "I'm all natty, and I'm eating liver and elk meat and running up hills in the rain," and it's like, okay, I respect the hustle. Turns out he was on the test steroids. So number one, be careful of that. If you're a man that's trying to like, you know what, I got to get it back. But there is some truth of just like, go lift some weights, eat some red meat, dude. Like,
Mhm.
and it's kind of bro science, but it's real. There's some about like, Joe Rogan and him and his like fighter buddies. I'm eating elk meat and going hunting. And it's like, there's,
Great.
there's something about that.
It's hard to go elk hunting, by the way. It's very physical.
Oh, no, it's very physical.
very
Yeah.
physical.
Heavy packs, big hills, right?
So lift weights, eat protein, digest your fats properly,
And challenge
and
yourself.
sleep
Yeah.
and challenge yourself.
Yeah. You'll sleep. You go elk hunting, you'll sleep.
Yeah. Emotional component. We're going to talk about that. Men need, we'll reiterate, respect. They need to be chosen. They need physical affection. And they also need emotional safety too, which you've talked about.
I think the
It's
emotional
just
safety, how a man would feel that would be like the kind of like the performance and like stuff like that.
like supporting your dreams and like supporting you. Or what are you talking about?
I mean, all of the above, like
Yeah.
really, but also just kind of like, it's easy. It's easy for a man to be bulletproof around his friends and around his kind of like outside life where it's just like, ha ha ha, everybody takes a shot at dad. That's cool. Like sometimes it's just like, especially if it's your wife or like, sometimes even just something you're like your daughter or your kids would say, sometimes things just kind of get through a little bit. You're just like,
Yeah.
hey, come on.
Yeah, as a wife, I've had to learn how to not be so critical. I can be very critical on myself, and so that definitely would trickle over to how I was talking to you. And I've really tried to make an effort to just be positive about what you're doing and be encouraging. And that goes with handing over that leadership too, right? Allowing you to, hey, make the decision, happy to support you, give
And
my
sometimes
thoughts about it.
that means that I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Or it's like, and I always could have done it better. And a lot of times you don't have to say anything
Yeah.
because like all of a sudden you'll hear it from me when I'm like kind of pacing around and like a week or two later and it's just like, I could have done that better. I could have done that better. And you're like, hey, you know what? You got out there and you did it. I'm proud of you. And then I'm the one that's like, I am volunteering my own faults to you. You're not nagging me. You're the one that's just like, you know what? I still love you. Like, you'll do better next time. And then at that point, you didn't have to say anything besides, you know what? You just go for it. If you really feel strongly about it, we're relying on you, we're trusting you, but just go for it. And so at that point, she doesn't have to nag me because now I'm kicking myself. I should have, would have, could have, should have. And anyway, yeah.
There's also a subset of men who, when they have these things going on in the background, they'll actually just withdraw and completely shut down.
Yeah, and that's a tough one too, because I guess there's this way that it's like you do kind of have to protect you. I have to protect you a little bit.
Hmm.
Like I can't, and by that I mean that I can't expose you to just like the ragged edge of all of my kind of like inner turmoil around like a really stressful situation.
Okay, well, we have to start wrapping it up. So
Yeah,
let's actually talk really quick about hormone replacement therapy, when and how. I think that's really big.
big.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
this is I believe in balance, right? So typically with our male patients, we'll start with the metabolic health, we'll start with the stress, we'll start with the sleep. We'll get the foundation really
What's your
working,
reasoning behind that?
because most of the time when you're giving injectable,
Right,
it's an injectable testosterone,
right.
it has to go through the liver. It has to be processed through the body. And if the body's
Hmm.
already inflamed, you're
Hmm.
running a higher risk of having issues,
Cardiac, like,
cardiac issues and liver issues.
yeah,
And it also doesn't work. It works
sort of,
temporarily,
yeah.
but you're always having to chase after it.
Yeah. And it's like if I'm not solving all those like emotional things, like my sex life is in the dump with my wife, my kids are disrespectful towards me, and I'm sure I have problems, but well, the wife has her side too, but I feel like my wife's kind of nagging me and critical of me. And, when honestly I'm getting fat and things aren't working like they used to kind of thing. If I'm in that position and I just add testosterone on top of it,
Mhm.
it's kind of like going and buying a Porsche. Like it's gonna be cool, but it's not really gonna fix it.
It also becomes maintenance, not
Yeah.
restoring the issue.
Yeah. Like, it's not going to be like, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm just like, you know what? I'm really happy to be me. What does God have for me? How can I serve the people I love and fulfill my dreams?
Yeah, it won't be that. But it'll
Like,
be, and for some men, they feel like it helped to motivate them enough to do the other things too.
yeah. And I guess in that sense, like, I can understand why. Like, if you're just on the floor and you're just like, I don't even have the drive to like put on my shoes and go for a run or go lift some
Yeah.
weights.
So
Maybe it gets you off the couch.
So some labs that you might want to have your primary care doctor look at for men, obviously you want to look at their liver health. So that's called a complete metabolic panel. And you want to have them look at free testosterone and total testosterone, something called SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin. You actually want to look at another one that's not on here is pregnenolone. That is actually the precursor to all hormones.
What about all your blood sugar and stuff?
Yeah, DHEA. Yeah, the CMP will have
Okay, sure.
glucose, fasting glucose, but you'd also want to look at the thyroid.
Yeah.
You also want to run estradiol. Estradiol
Hmm.
is E2. If a man doesn't have
It's a type
enough
of estrogen.
estrogen, if they don't have enough estradiol specifically, they will have a hard time with erection, actually.
Okay.
So there's a very finite range that you actually want them to be in. And the other thing to look at is something called prolactin. Prolactin really should only be expressed in women who are breastfeeding.
Mhm.
But if a man is very stressed, they will start to produce more prolactin to shut down the pituitary's ability to make testosterone. If they have an excess amount of body fat, or as you were talking about, adipose tissue in the chest area, yes, they are at a higher risk of having higher prolactin. And again, that might be the reason why. I've also seen men who get high levels of prolactin when they're fasting a lot and they're actually overworking out, because again, they're stressing their body out
I
so
did that.
much.
I ended up really high cortisol and some of those kind of PRL and
So
some of that stuff
sometimes
was
just
showing
even
up.
evening out those other
Yeah.
hormones will help the
Yeah.
production of the
And I was working
testosterone.
out 2 or 3 times a day, training really hard.
Great.
So
Just
anyway,
some simple tips here. We've talked about lift heavy things, prioritize sleep, eliminate your seed oils, balance your blood sugar, remove endocrine disruptors,
mhm,
limit your alcohol, reduce, I would say eliminate porn, in my opinion, build purpose, lead spiritually in your home, cultivate vitality. That's how it's
yeah.
cultivated.
Yeah. I would have all the like have the start having the hard conversations. And like if you and your wife haven't been getting along, this could be like a process.
Mhm.
So like it might be like, hey, like we're gonna read this book together. There's a lot of kind of books about, marriage and things like that. And just kind of go through them. Read a chapter every night and just kind of comment or don't.
As a wife, I really like doing that.
Yeah, I think that helped kind of open the conversations with you because then it's like I didn't bring it up like I'm kind of coming at you and you didn't bring it up like you're coming at me. It's just like there's this let's talk about what this author says.
Yeah.
Did this land? Did it, what did? But just maybe you're gonna have to like train up to honey, I've been watching porn.
Yeah.
Like or whatever that is for you. Like, and you can't really have that conversation right off. So train up for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Spiritual integration.
Yeah. So let's do this quote. Just read this is Genesis 2:15.
The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and guard and keep it, guard, protect, and cultivate. When a man reclaims his health, he reclaims his leadership. And actually, that gets into like stewardship. Yeah, there's this process of like, I don't own my wife as such, but as a husband, it is my job to steward that and steward that relationship. So it's like there's a protection, there's like she has room to grow. And that's, I think, where the line between, say, like domination and headship is like, does she have room to grow? And if she doesn't, you'll know, or you'll find out.
Just read that.
This is a quote. Who's this from?
Me.
All right.
Okay.
A man's libido isn't just about sex. It's a barometer of his energy, stress, identity, and spiritual alignment. That's true. I would put the caveat on it, though, that sometimes there can be men that get really imbalanced and they want to express all of their masculinity just through sex, just with their wife.
Yep.
And that can be sometimes too much of a burden if you want to have sex 3 times a day and, you know, she's got kids and it's just not really as much as she can have sex. You know, she should meet you halfway on it here and there. But it's like also like, I don't know, go run, go get a car. Do interesting things that are like, you know,
taking up some of that energy.
Yeah, that are masculine energy.
It's not put everything into I need my validation from this. I need my needs from this.
Yeah. So you also need other masculine outlets except for sex.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us on episode 37.
Was that 37?
It was 37, yes.
Now it's 38.
All
right, we got to
We'll see you next time. We got to go.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.